Go.
Okay. Oh, hi, Salesh. Thank you for dropping in. Have a seat, and I'll go through some of these procedures with you. Um, obviously, you want to learn a little bit more about how to prepare the client and the service area for facial service according to your workplace health and safety and the requirements, health and regulation requirements. So the session is about how to set up the area, um, how to set up your client for your special service. Obviously, it may sound really easy to set up an area. Well, what is there to do? You just um, put towels on and get stuff together. It's not as easy as that because there is a process you have to follow. Especially when you're working in a workplace, you have to follow all the procedures according to workplace health and safety. And so that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at how to set up the service area. And I'll explain it to you as we go along. So if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask me questions and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So with this one, the learning outcome is going to be obviously, you will learn how to set up the area, you'll learn how to prepare the client. And for this particular session, the assessment method is going to be by demonstration. So obviously you're going to demonstrate how you prepare the work area, your service area, and the other part of assessment is questions. So as you're setting up, you will be asked a set of questions so we can determine that you have good understanding of this particular topic. So I'm just going through some of these things that you had pinpointed that you need to go through. Okay, so to start off with, with your workplace and healthy regulations, as you would have already studied in your manuals, some of the things you have to look at. Starting with your equipment, you have to make sure that the equipment is safe to handle. There's no issues with, like cords, loose cords hanging around where, a customer can trip over. So obviously with this type of setup, you will make sure that the clients are on that end of the table because unfortunately sometimes you can't avoid the cords. So you will make sure that the client is on the other side of the table and this area is not accessible to clients. And in good practice, you will also maybe put a mat over your thing or tape the cord down so that way there is no tripping danger. And in simple things like, we might not think about them, but as simple as we have a water heater here, and this water heats up, as you can see, for the steam to come through. So while the client is lying there and you've got the steamer going, the client might move the hand out and might burn their hand on this hot little canister. So little things like you would think of is hanging a towel there, and also make sure that you let the client know at the beginning, just in case they forget while they're so relaxed and they might move their hand out or something. So just let them know that I have got this towel here, but just be careful while this is operational that you don't burn your hand. And once you have finished using it, the best thing for you to do is come around, wrap it up, wrap up the cord around that, and then put it away so that where there's no danger later on. So that is one of the things you would look for. So you have equipment like your magnifying lamp. Some of the models, they come with fittings that can be loosed, and there is a danger of the lamp falling on client's face while you're doing examination of their skin. So obviously you will look into things like that. If there are things that need to be repaired, you will label them and put it in the area where it's going to be taken away for repairs. So that's something you'll be looking at as well. And even the bed, like making sure that the bed is safe, like none of the legs are loose, You will do regular checks on things like that. Now, this particular bed has got hydraulic in it, so there is no danger for this bed to have damage. It is pretty strong bed. Um, and since we are talking about the bed, it's always good to start, if you have the choice of hydraulic bed, good to start at a very low setting so the client can actually sit, lie down, and that's when you raise the bed according to your height. So, so you don't want to raise the bed before the client gets on it because they might have back issues or something like that. So that is the reason you would keep the bed at the lowest setting, and then you will raise that once the client has lied down. So things like that you'll be looking at. Always good to have work trolleys with wheels so they're easy to move around. So that way you can move around your workplace. The reason we have this setup here as it is now is because I want you to see all the equipment that are needed, but in your real work environment you will have the proper places for these things. So I've just put all the equipment around me so that way I can show you what they look like and how you can ensure the safety of yourself and the clients. And so these are the equipment you'll be using. You have hot waxes at workplace, and obviously you will make sure that they are covered so there's no danger of it accidentally splashing a client. You would have the cords secured just in case a client does forget and step out on this side. We don't want them to get tangled up on the cord and the hot wax tips over on them. So these are the things you will be looking at. And so that's a little bit about the equipment that you're handling. And then the next thing is the products. So the products, obviously, you're familiar with products. So that's number one thing, because that is part of your training. You get familiarized with products. When it comes to workplace health and safety with products, what we are looking for is you get to know your product, you know your ingredients, and if there are any products that you're handling, even maybe something like the cleaning material, things like that, refer to your MSDS. If there is any issues, if someone accidentally swallows it and accidentally it goes in someone's eyes, always refer to your MSDS, and that we always have that on file. And also with products you have to look at environmental impact. So when you're disposing of any leftover creams, oils, obviously we don't reuse them for health reasons, but when you are disposing them, you have to make sure that you don't just stick them into the sink. You will wipe them with tissues or some sort of a paper towel, and you'll put them into the bin, so that way you're not causing any environmental effect with your disposal items. And also disposing of things, you have a bin here with a lid. It's best for this sort of environment, a bin with the lid is necessary, because we do use products that can create fumes, like we have alcohol wipes and we have nail polish removers and things like that. And if you have them sitting in open bin, it can create fumes, and that can get very irritating for clients. So it is always an advisable thing to have a lid on the bin. And so even things like you always make sure that you use your hand sanitizer every now and then. You obviously have to ensure your own cleanliness. Presentation is also important. And then in between services, you can always use your hand sanitizer. We have this antibacterial spray here. In between clients, we disinfect the service area, the work areas, and because this is to avoid any cross-contamination. You might have a client that might have some sort of bacterial infection that can pass on to another client. So things like that you have to remember. And Like I said, personal hygiene is very important. If you're suffering from contagious things like flu or colds, it's best that you ring up and tell your supervisor or one of your teachers, that this is the situation, and I'm sure they will pardon you for that. And and I mean, even simple things like your normal tissues, disposing them on in closed lids. Obviously, it doesn't look nice if you have dirty tissues lying around. It's not really hygienic. So it's best to put them in the bin. And also making sure that your PPE, personal protective equipment or gear, is also up to date. So things like your gloves, you have your disposable gloves on hand always. You might be needing them for waxing services, or you might be needing them for doing extractions. So it is very important that you use your PPE. Um, and the sterilization, we don't really have things that we need to sterilize, because in Queensland, you need a special license for breaking the skin. So as beauty therapists, we can do extractions, but when it comes to penetrating the skin, we need special license. So if in that case, then you will be using autoclaves. But at this, when we do our own extractions, we normally use alcohol wipes and things like that, and gloves when we do that. And for that reason, you need to sort of keep your own safety in mind and the client's safety in mind, and you need your PPE gear. And even for yourself, it's not only the client that is important, your safety is important as well. So you need to look after your health, you need to look after your back, you need to make sure that you have correct posture. When you are working with a client, you have stools that you work on, and you can work at the correct height. And that is the reason we have adjustable bed, so that can go up and down according to your height. And there are times that you might be faced with a client who has got contagious disorder, and you know that treating them might cause problems, spread any infection, and you have the right to refuse them service politely. Obviously, you will ask them that we'll have to wait until your condition is better, and ask them to bring a doctor's clearance certificate with them for the next visit. And and also when I mentioned the equipment, like I said, to check the safety of, the performance of each equipment, make sure that they've been checked and tagged, tested and tagged and things like that. Then you have towel warmer. Unfortunately, in the camera you can't see that, but we have towel warmers. You have to make sure that that's all set up. Sometimes they can get a lot of water underneath, collecting at the bottom, and can start water overflowing and can cause problems. So you have to make sure that the water is empty. And with setting up the client, obviously after you have welcomed them into your clinic, you would have done the paperwork with them, filling out the correct forms, getting all the relevant information. Then you can check for the correct service that you're going to perform for them. And so obviously checking the products, always good idea to also check your products for expiry dates and things like that. You don't want a product smelling really off, and if you don't realize that, the client might sense that, and then it might have some sort of adverse reaction on the client's skin. So we don't want that. So and also like when you're setting up, you have to also look at all sorts of details, like your lighting. Making sure that the lighting is at a comfortable brightness. It's not too bright for the client. When they're relaxed, we don't want like a bright light shining in their eyes. and also room temperature is comfortable. You don't want it to be too hot or too cold. You want to make sure that the client is very comfortable. And also when you're setting up, make sure that your products are already here. Everything you need is on hand, you know, including all the towels and headbands and everything. The worst thing one can do is forget something and then having to leave the room to get it. You know, it can be annoying for a client when they're lying there, relax, and then you're going in and out of the room because you forgot something. We have on the list of things that need to be prepared, so you can refer to those and refer to that list, and you can always you know, check everything that you've got before you start the service. And also keeping the talking to minimum. You know, we don't want to sort of disturb the client too much, but you also want to make sure that they are comfortable, so you can ask them questions, you know, if they're comfortable, but obviously not making a conversation while you're performing the service. We don't want, you know, we don't want to take away from the client's experience. And you know, like while you're doing the consultation, at that point you have asked your clients, you know, if they have any allergies and things like that, because you're going to adjust your skincare ritual, you know, according to you know, according to the form that you have filled out. So if they have any allergies to certain products, obviously you will look into that. And so when you are laying out your products, obviously you'll have them in the correct order, so that way, you know, when you do each step, you just move next to the next bottle, next product, because when the room lighting is very minimum, it will be hard to read everything. So it's always a good idea to lay the products in the correct order, so that way you don't have to go looking for the products in the dark, and that can be very annoying for a client if you're cluttering around in the background. So for that reason, make sure that you have everything laid out in correct order. And just go through some of these points. Okay, and so yeah, so that's pretty much how everything is laid out. And with your client, obviously you have this, well, I've sort of talked about how to set up the area. With your clients, you know, you would have done your consultation form, and you would have asked them all sorts of questions. So that way you're all ready for the service, and client is well informed. You would have run them through the process of what's going to happen. You would have told them that, okay, this is the information, then we're going to do a skin analysis. Obviously you need this equipment, your magnifying lamp, and then you would have done your skin analysis. After the skin analysis, you would have asked the client to just relax while you go and get the correct products for them. And at that point, you know, the client is already relaxed. You make sure that they're comfortable, and then you can dim the lights and you can start your service. And I'll give you a demonstration here on how to set up the bed as well. So obviously you're going to keep these things out of the way while you start. So starting with your towel. So with your towels, obviously you are going to make sure that you have removed the towels after each client. And so you're okay with everything so far? You understand? Yeah. Okay, that's good. And so this is a towel. Now we've got another one that is a smaller towel that goes across. This is for a reason it goes across, because sometimes there might be some spills, or there might be some creams that run off the client's face from the side. So you could always use the end of it and mop them up. So for that reason, this towel goes sideways, so that way you have access. It sort of stops you from having too many little towels around. So for that reason, this doubles up as a bit of a hand towel as well. And then obviously you will have your third towel, which is, you can keep it nicely like this, rolled up on top of the bed, and then just let client know that this is the towel. You can cover yourself up with. Obviously, then we're going to have blankets and things like that for winter time. And you know, if a client is feeling cold, you can always offer them a blanket, and then they get into these gowns. That's where they are ready for the service. So you could have the gown all rolled up nicely, and it looks nice. And if you want to give it a bit of a nice holistic touch, you could place a flower on the setting, and it just looks welcoming when the client walks in, and they feel like they're getting a very special treat. So this is how you will lay out the bed. So is that clear so far? Okay. And then small things, small little details. Obviously, it's always good to have a little hand towel. This is more like a face washer. I always like to have a towel here, just in case I want to wipe my hands in between the creams and things like that, because it does sort of gets everywhere. So it's always good to have a thing. And another thing I use this for is when you have creams all over your hands, and then you want to touch this equipment, you're going to have creams and oils all over your equipment. So what I normally do is use one of these, switch the light on, and I use the towel for me to adjust the angle of this. Another thing with this one, the reason I have to adjust the angle, because you do not face it to the client as you switch it on, only because sometimes it can spit hot water, and you don't want the client getting burnt. So obviously you will keep it that, and when it's ready, I just put my towel over there and I move it to the in position, and that's what the function is for this little hand towel. It's always a little handy thing to have. And then obviously your headbands. I normally place my headband across this way before I start, so that way the client know where to place the head, and that way once they have lie down, then you don't need to ask them again to lift the head, so you can put the headband on. Once they lie down, then all you do is clip that in and it's ready to go. So it's always good to have things. And little things like that, you know, and then you could have a little equipment like your extraction tool ready on the side. And always good to have a bit of a touch of essential oils to your service. Obviously, you'll make sure that they're not allergic to essential oils, or the client might be pregnant, and obviously you can't use essential oils with pregnant client. You know, you need to know your correct oils for pregnancy. So obviously, we don't want to take any risks. So that's something you will look into. And I think that's all I can think of at this stage. But let me just think if I've left something out. Yes, I have. We've got this little tidy bin. As you can see, that I have already told you about this bin with the lid. But the thing is, if you're working there and you don't have access to the big bin, and you don't want to keep all your cotton buds and your face washes and things, cotton pads lying around. So it's always good to have this one, so you can just pop them in there, and that way it's out of sight and area is looking nice and tidy. And even things like little cushions, you know, if you do have to ask them to turn over, you know, things like that for their comfort, little spongy thing like that, you know, on the face hole where they can have a little support to their face. And addition to the ambience or the setup of the room, you know, this is one of our remote control. Always good to have a remote control for your CD player or the music that you're going to play in the background. And I keep mine in a plastic resealable bag, because my hands are full of cream while I'm performing the facial or massage, and then when you touch it, you're going to damage your controller. So always good to keep the controller in a plastic bag. And the reason I find this a very handy tool is because sometimes you might have different series, and this volume can go up and down, and it can become very, the client can sort of get startled with loud music. And that way you can control it from where you are. You don't have to leave your spot to do that, because leaving client unattended, obviously, is not the best thing to do. And even little things like that, it looks very fancy, it's just a fan, but I keep that handy on clients when I do their clay masks. It's always good to have a little fan to fan their clay mask to dry, and they just feel like they're getting something special. They see this beautiful fan, and you're sitting there fanning their, their mask. They just think they think they're getting thoroughly spoiled. And even things like, to the ambience you can add little water features and things like that. You have the sound of trickling water in the background. That can be very soothing for a client. And like I like to have my salt lamp on, because I feel like they really add to the atmosphere and make the room feel really calming. So I really like my salt lamps. And as you can see that I have decorated my room with few fairy lights. It always adds to the thing. And one good thing about this is, like, once you have switched your main light off, you don't want to be in total darkness. So it actually gives you enough light to work with. So for that reason, I have the fairy lights, and it sort of looks nice as well. There's a bit of a light for you. And things like, even your cotton pads, have them all handy, ready to go. So your cotton pads are here, your alcohol wipes are here. Alcohol wipes are used for the extraction tool, so it's always good to have one of these sitting on the table. And before you perform extraction, make sure you wipe your tool with the alcohol wipe. So they're always handy, kept here. And then you have other tools here. You've got tweezers and things like that. You might be doing a facial, and client might have a couple of hair on their chin or something, and they said, "Oh, can you just pull it out?" It's always good to have one of the tweezers sitting there as well. And then you have your cotton balls that you can use for removal of eye makeup and things like that. So those ones are handy. So you could always have a little bowl full of these things, one of each or two of each. So that way you're not leaving the client to bring things, because you never know. Not all clients might have makeup on, but some clients may have makeup on. And then if they have, and then you realize, oh, I need a cotton to remove the eye makeup, you don't want to be leaving the client unattended. So it's always good to have all these things ready. And then also, in replacement of the headband, we also have these hair nets. So you could use the hair nets, or you could have that, depending on the client's hair. If the client has got long hair and it is sort of getting in your way, you could always use one of these hair nets. So they're always kept here. And I like to have one sitting here with every client, whether I need it or not. It doesn't require much space. It sort of sits in a little strip like that. So it's always good to have one of these. I like to have some, I've got these Huggies Natural Care with aloe and vitamin E. They're just wipes. And it's good to have wipes like that, just in case you need to wipe something quickly. You don't want to leave the room just to go and get a sponge or something. So I like to have one of these sitting here. So that's pretty much it, so have I sort of answered all your questions?
Yes, we took a covered it.
Okay, that's good. And so that's pretty much it. I've just I'll just go and cap up everything that we have discussed. So I have demonstrated to you how to set up the work area according to the workplace health and safety and your health regulations according to your legislation. And it's pretty much what you have learned so far. So it's just a matter of practicing it. And I appreciate you have taken the time to ask more questions about this, and you want to make sure that you're doing it right, and and that's always a good thing, you know, to make sure that you understand it correctly, and hopefully that, you know, this will help you in future. And it's always about practicing. You know, you're new to this at the moment, and as you go, you will get more and more practice, and then you'll be doing it in your sleep one day. So yeah, so don't be afraid to have a go, and if you're not sure, and if you get stuck, there's always your supervisors, your teachers, even your fellow students, you know, the senior students, they'll be happy to help you. So there's no reason for you to be afraid and be doubtful about this. It does look daunting as when you're new to this field, but as you go, it will get easy for you. And like I said, we're always here to help you if you have any questions. So don't feel awkward to ask. We all start the same way. We all started how you are starting, and we had to learn everything from scratch ourselves. So I understand your fears, and just put your mind to rest that it's okay to ask questions. No question is, silly. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll be seeing you around campus, and all the best with your studies. Okay. So I think, all right then. Well, I'm going to start wrapping up things here, and I'll see you in the classroom.